I wanted to share a story about what happened to my health over the course of several years. It's a unique sequence of events revolving around the gut, but I'm sharing it in hopes that if you or someone you know is going through something similar, this might give you some answers or a new direction to look into. Around ages 13 to 16, I took doxycycline for acne. As a young person, I didn't think twice about what this could be doing to my health. I just trusted the authority of the doctor. In retrospect, I learned this acne pill can irritate the esophagus, causing burning, ulcerations, or scarring, which could slow down a person's esophagus's ability to move food down the digestive tract. By age 17 to 18, an endoscopy showed that my esophagus was full of burning and scarring, and I was diagnosed with gastroesophageal reflux disease. Even though the burning likely came from the acne pill, my gastroenterologist thought the burning was coming from my stomach acid making its way into my esophagus. She thought the burning would stop once we reduced my body's ability to produce stomach acid. I was prescribed a daily pill called Nexium to reduce stomach acid. I stayed on Nexium daily for at least a year. What I didn't know was while Nexium suppressed acid, stomach acid is actually your gut's primary defense system. Suppressing it meant foreign bacteria could survive, multiply, and slow down stomach emptying even further. So eventually, all of this slowdown in my esophagus presents itself. A bit gross, but involuntarily, I start regurgitating contents from every single meal I ate, and I for sure have bloating and tons of painful trapped gas in my body at this point after each meal. So I go back to the gastroenterologist. She identifies that I currently have a hiatal hernia, meaning the upper part of my stomach is sliding up into my chest, a space where your esophagus is supposed to live, not your stomach. And I'm now told I require a surgery to resolve the hernia. I'm still only 18 and haven't really begun to understand independently owning and managing my own health. The doctor assures me this is really the for sure final crux of the problem. I finished the surgery and the food regurgitation is gone. But after the long recovery, I noticed that I'm still experiencing a ton of bloating and a ton of other problems that are simply not normal and not something I wanted to simply accept. So I finally start trying to learn about exercise, cooking, and eating healthy, not just because of my gut, but at first because I just wanted to become a more independent person. I wanted to learn and grow. And while I was seeing improvements in the gym and it had me feeling better in some ways, my newfound autonomy seemed like it could benefit me in other places. My general immunity wasn't great and my digestion was terrible. So I thought, what about some of these diets people are trying? At the time, I mostly ate chicken, rice, vegetables, and I tried incorporating salmon, but I was making big changes in my life at the time, and I figured why not try something big? We'll face mistakes and we'll pivot until we manage to find the best way to eat. So I'm 19 years old at the time, and I decided to start with veganism. Eating clean was really emphasized in health at the time, so it likely subconsciously seemed appealing, even though clean would turn out to be a vague marketing buzzword. Either way, I was willing to give the diet a good, honest try before giving up on it and trying something else. I even had a doctor and nutritionist I was working with on it. It was emphasized that I should avoid protein, fat, and vitamin deficiencies like B and D vitamins. So I tracked everything and I was eating large portions of food like some kind of black hole in order to hit my numbers. Despite this, right away, I started experiencing a fuzzy, foggy brain. I continued to try to pivot the diet, mostly removing foods, but it only got worse because I wanted to succeed at the diet that wasn't helping me. I cut down foods until I was only eating strawberries, pineapple, and grapes. It only hit me that I'd steered the ship so off course when my nutritionist said I might have orthorexia. This is an obsession with attaining optimum health through restricting foods. I just couldn't shake that my body felt awful, and there was a time when it hadn't, and I could return to my previous state. But Even when I began eating all foods again and eating meat again, I still felt awful. It felt like a major defeat. I felt so awful at this point that not only was my mind fuzzy and foggy, but throughout the dieting, I had to quit exercising because I just couldn't handle it like I used to. And after every meal, my body was forced to sleep in the middle of the day, 3 times a day, often each sleep lasted hours. You can see how I felt like I didn't want to stand for that. I couldn't accept defeat, but here we were. I didn't know it, but I later learned what happened in my body. The mechanisms that automatically move food through the stomach and my stomach acid had been so tampered with by drugs, potentially the surgery, and maybe other things. So when I sent massive amounts of plant foods into my body, I unknowingly caused a big problem. And I was eating a lot of plant foods. Plant foods are high in fiber. Fiber feeds gut bacteria. So I was feeding bacteria faster than ever before. And all of our bodies have a mechanism called the MMC, migrating motor complex. It sweeps bacteria out of the small intestine where it doesn't belong and where it can cause problems. But as you may have noticed, I had a track record of slowing or thwarting these useful mechanisms. I had created the perfect storm for this probiotic bacteria to thrive in my small intestine. The particular population of bacteria fed on fiber multiplied and produced a substance called D-lactic acid. Normally, probiotics are helpful, but because of where they were living, they were making life into a living nightmare. D-lactic acid is a molecule. If too much of it is produced in the body, it enters the bloodstream and travels throughout the body. This is called D-lactic acidosis. In the bloodstream, it lowers blood pH, making it more acidic than it's supposed to be. This inhibits your body's ability to produce energy. The bloodstream carries it to the brain, where it crosses the blood brain barrier, where it acts as a neurotoxin. It seems like it's known for putting someone into an unbalanced, lethargic, slurred speech, almost intoxicated state, and can even cause comas. I don't know that I was facing regular comas by definition, but I was certainly being forced to sleep and wasn't woken easily. Even if I was woken, it still didn't mean I could move my body parts, sometimes for 30 minutes at a time, but other times this paralysis could last for several hours. So I had to avoid eating any plants to get by. And taking probiotics was only going to feed the potential for me to have one of these paralysis like episodes. I grew to know to avoid these things and had ideas about why. But I didn't know about D-lactic acidosis at this time. Naturally, it became my life to escape this. Between ages 19 and 20, I treated myself like a lab rat, trying all sorts of experiments on myself, seeing all sorts of doctors, and everything led to no answers or just made matters worse. Then I met a gastroenterologist who said he'd take a shot in the dark and have me try a drug called Rifaximin, which doesn't activate until it's deeper in the gut where it kills bacteria. It's like the opposite of taking a probiotic for your gut microbiome. A lot of people use it to treat small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and this pill gave me relief. Eating only meat caused me to lose way too much weight. I was finally able to eat foods containing fibers and carbs. I wouldn't quite say I could exercise, but going for a walk was manageable. The forced sleep became a rare event that only happened if I wasn't careful or missed the pill too much. I was able to feel a lot safer driving a car. It allowed me to at least get by and pretend like I was living a normal life like everyone else. But the problem was, I knew I was still living in a fog and we were only shoveling the water out of a sinking ship. We hadn't plugged the hole. And while I had learned a lot, I still didn't know what or where that hole was. For the next several years between age 20 and 28, I would search and experiment, but less so. I had a life to live, and I didn't want my life to pass me by like it had this much already. I had been seeking through doctors, experiments, and Googling, but in 2022, a new method of search came around called AI. As if making a pull on a slot machine every time a new AI model would come out, I would feed it a book of information on my history, experiments, symptoms, and anything I've been able to learn to see if the AI could make anything of it. Even the AI couldn't figure it out at first. It would list a handful of things that it might be, but none of them seemed like likely diagnoses. But with all these AI companies racing to make the better I continued to feed my story to every new AI on the block. Then in late 2025, one of the AI models didn't give me multiple unlikely diagnoses. It gave me one, and it essentially said, "You have D-lactic acidosis, a rare subtype of small intestinal bacterial overgrowth." And it gave an explanation of what it was. And with the strangeness of my experience, I do not come across conditions that are highly specific. And 100% dead on, this one was. So naturally, I look into how I can resolve this. My battle plan was essentially a mass genocide of the bacteria, which I've tried in many ways in the past. But this plan seemed to tie a lot of my learnings together to perform what was the most unstoppable attack I could think of. I was going to spend 4 weeks eating no fiber, meaning eating essentially a carnivore diet. This will starve the bacteria. At the same time, I would take rifaximin with each meal, essentially dropping bombs on the bacteria. Then, lastly, during periods of fasting, I would take a very specific prokinetic, which would encourage my body's MMC to continue sweeping bacteria out of the small intestine where it doesn't belong. And I would skip lunch, so I had two fasting windows per day between breakfast and dinner, and then overnight between dinner and breakfast. My body experienced heavy die off reactions, symptoms that happen when bacteria are killed off rapidly. So I felt heavy fatigue, flu like chills, and body aches. And at the end of the 4 weeks, I continued the prokinetic, eventually reintroducing a lunch and just taking the prokinetic once before bed. And at this time, I also began taking a very specific probiotic strain called Clostridium butyricum. This strain doesn't produce D-lactic acid, it actually eats D-lactic acid, and it helps foster an atmosphere that keeps D-lactic acid producing bacteria outside of the small intestine. Despite all the die off reactions, I was feeling the weight being lifted right away. I was seeing improvements in my vision, hearing, smell, ability to think without fogginess. My muscles were no longer under stress and no longer felt tension or like I was dragging around a heavy weight. I was still tired but felt light instead of heavy. I had high hopes it was all going to be over, but I had to face the aftermath. Healing from the damage that had gone on over all these years, I learned that carrying acidic pH blood throughout your body's bloodstream for 9 years does damage to your entire blood vessel system. I'm not entirely certain why the blood problems didn't show until after the overgrowth was gone. I have suspicions that it has to do with my body sustaining me all those years with adrenaline and finally being able to let go. Either way, normal blood vessels contract and pump blood, but my doctor confirmed that mine were likely loose and not pumping blood. So when I would stand up, my blood pooled in my feet. You could even see parts of my feet turning purple. I would become dizzy without enough blood pumping into my brain, and it would cause me to gasp for air, feeling like I was unable to breathe. And blood not reaching the gut when it was time for your body to digest meant a poor digesting experience. Through a doctor, I began taking midodrine, a drug that tightens your blood vessels, increasing blood pressure, which is actually helpful in this case. I could feel a heavy thumping feeling in my body all these years, but with the midodrine time and gradual exercise, I can feel the improvement in this blood issue. It's been several months, and I'm not perfect, but with the acidosis no longer wreaking havoc on my body, and the gradual improvement I've seen, I do have faith I'll be able to fully put all of this behind me. Given this is a rare condition, there isn't a lot of information out there on it. I hope this can help anyone who is dealing with it. Thank you.